episode of Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck. And this week we will once again be exploring mindset, athletic performance, and its relationship to mental health. So stay tuned for that.
According to the CDC in 2023, over 10 million teenagers reported experiencing persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. 10 million. And it's not just teenagers. Over 51 million adults struggle with mental health challenges every single year. Parents, this isn't just statistics. It's our children. It's us. And it's a wake-up call. But here's the thing. Knowledge and awareness is a first step to change. Yet the most important knowledge, the kind that can truly transform lives, is rarely taught. It's not about memorizing facts or getting perfect grades. It's about learning how to train your mindset. At the Unstoppable Mindset Masterclass, we'll teach you and your family how to take control, how to overcome limiting beliefs, tackle financial stress, and rise above the challenges that hold you back. You will gain tools to build unshakable confidence, foster resilience and grit to handle life's toughest moments, and turn habits into rituals that drive lasting change. Imagine the relief of watching your teenager face life with hope instead of hopelessness. Imagine equipping them and yourself with the mindset to not just survive, but thrive. Visit unstoppablemindsetmasterclass.com and register to take the first step towards your transformation.
And welcome back. I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Stan Skolfield, a seasoned expert in the field of sports medicine and sports performance. With over 25 years experience, Stan has dedicated his career to advancing the field of athletic training and performance through innovative practices and deep commitment to athlete development. After pioneering the athletic training degree program at the University of Southern Maine, Stan went on to make significant contributions in various prestigious roles, including working with the Boston Red Sox and managing one of New England's first fully integrated sports medicine and sports performance facilities. His passion for sports medicine and coaching led him to create Skolfield Sports Performance, a cutting-edge facility where he helps athletes of all ages reach their full potential. Stan's approach is holistic, focusing not only on physical training, but also on the mental and emotional well-being of athletes. He's here today to share his insights on how discipline, goal setting, and comprehensive approach to fitness can transform lives, both on and off the field. He's also a devoted family man and an avid outdoorsman, bringing a well-rounded perspective to everything he does. Let's welcome Stan Skolfield to the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Love it. My pleasure. And I'm really kind of looking forward to hearing all your insights into this avenue of not just sports performance, but kind of its relationship to mental health. So kind of, why don't we just begin with having you tell the audience a little bit about your background, and maybe even beginning, sometimes have the teens show up. So kind of where you began, like high school, and how that led you into this career that you've chosen.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Scarborough, Maine, right? Three-sport athlete. And I've always been one to kind of be a self-starter in a lot of different things I do. And that's showed up everywhere from like owning my own like lawn mowing business when I was a kid to even in high school. Like I was a diver in high school, but my high school didn't have a swim team at that time period. So I figured out a way so that I could compete in diving, dive exhibition for some of the local area high school teams and get myself to qualify for the state meet in high school, and ended up being a 2-time state champion. And, that kind of lent itself kind of going into like college, where I dove at the Division I level, but then left and went in the military. And then from there, when I got in the military, I had a really kind of a clear idea of kind of what I wanted to study, which was like athletic training. I had gotten hurt while I was diving in college, met this athletic trainer, started to give me some stuff I'd never seen before to kind of take away my injury. And I started inquiring, like, well, what do you do? And how does that work? And they explained how they can do everything from like emergency on-field management of injuries to like all the way from like the strength and conditioning side of things. And I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. So from there, like once I got back home, I started going to a local college, at the University of Southern Maine, and they didn't necessarily have the athletic training major, but what I was told is like, well, you could go and research some of the local colleges that do have the program, see what their coursework is, put it all together, and actually design your own major of athletic training here at the university and get it approved. And that's what I did. And I was the second person to graduate from the program itself, which is now a very robust and thriving program. And that kind of got me into, athletic training. And then from there kind of took me into strength and conditioning. And even from there, I've always been one to kind of, if I've got an interest in something, I'm going to seek out the way to make it happen. All the way from, once I left the Boston Red Sox, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but like when I got out of school, my first job, I always wanted to work in professional baseball. My first job was with the Boston Red Sox as an athletic trainer and a strength coach. Worked for them for 4 years. Like myself and the rehab coordinator, we pioneered. Like we were one of the first organizations to begin holding like off-season workouts to, develop athletes, like put more weight on them, give them more strength, give them more power. Primarily, the main goal out of that was like to kind of cut down on the number of injuries that we were seeing in spring training. And it started with like 8 guys. And by the time I left, after doing this for 4 years, like we worked that up to like, over 60 guys would show up early. Some guys would train the entire off season with us. So it was a very robust program. And that kind of lent me into like working for a large orthopedic group and, coming up with the idea of having like the area's first, like full, like sports medicine, sports performance facility where we had a sports medicine orthopedic office. We had a large sports physical therapy office, and then a 10,000 square foot sports performance facility. And there was nothing like that at the time. So I helped spearhead that. After I left healthcare, I decided, hey, I want to work in, I love working with athletes, and decided to start my own business, Skolfield Sports Performance. I literally started with one client out of a small studio gym that a friend of mine had owned, and grew it into what it is today, where we're in a 10,000 square foot facility, working with over 100 athletes, and a number of different teams. So, kind of, as you see, that's kind of my background, but it always kind of, when it comes to like entrepreneurship, I always kind of had it in me, because I've been doing it kind of along the way throughout my entire career.
I love that. There's so much mindset related stuff to the entrepreneurship, which is why, my show is athletes, families, and entrepreneurs. So you certainly show some of that. And I'm sure that kind of that mindset that is required for doing those sort of things, you bring into your coaching. And I'm sure that comes through with your, with the athletes that you're working with as well. And, certainly remember back in our day, it wasn't, people were just starting to go work out using Nautilus equipment and some of these other new kind of machines, but it was like, go lift weights. You didn't, there's no real understanding. And even at the professional level, I don't know, you probably remember the name Ruben Sierra, who came up, young guy, and he bulked up, right? He got really big, but as he got bigger, his stats started going down. And now this was from my observance, and I've always wondered about that. Like, was it he wasn't, because as you said, back in those days, I don't know how much we know so much more now. So, but it's all, bigger, faster, stronger. But the other piece, and this is kind of what I think I want you to talk to a little bit, is as you go through the training and you see yourself begin to get all these like benchmarks being hit, what that does to your psyche, your confidence. We know exercise helps your overall well-being, and from my experience, it just kind of fuels itself. It keeps building on it, right? The more you hit these benchmarks and check these things off, the more your mind is beginning to get engaged, and the more growth you have. Is that part of what you observe too in the process? And I know you said you're really big on trying to, have these goals and these benchmarks.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Like if you were to, as I always tell people, you know what I do for a living? I sell self-esteem to kids. And you talk about like what a great profession. I just use a medium of sports performance to do it. You think about like all the things that are going on and the challenges that kids have today, right? Like obesity rates for kids is at an all-time high. Over 30% of our population under 18 is obese, right? I'd argue that that number is closer to 40%. Go walk around Disney World sometime. Go walk around some of the schools sometime, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Injury rates are an all-time high, right? Over 3.5 sports-related injuries per year, most of which are non-contact. 75% of kids drop out of sports by the time they reach high school. And for a lot of people, they're like, what? That doesn't seem right with all this travel. But the problem is it's the same kids playing all the sports, because kids quickly realize that like, hey, if I'm not playing the game and if I'm not having success, or I'm always getting yelled at by mom and dad or the coaches about my performance, like, man, I can be a hero on video games, right? I can be the best ever. So we see this huge drop off of kids by the time they reach high school that are like, no, I'm not playing this anymore. And what we do, our mission, is to empower our community's youth, because I believe that like, through physical fitness and high personal standards and athletic development, we can help shape like a brighter future for, this next generation of kids, and you start combining like the power of exercise, and eating right and learning how to have a disciplined approach to like your day and getting yourself to establish goals that you want to hit. Like, man, when you start doing that, like when you start improving your fitness, like even ask adults, like when you're in great shape, like how do you feel? Your clothes feel better, your self-confidence starts to come back. Like that's what we deliver. And we use sports performance as a medium to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Over the years where in the programs I've had in public schools, I've had some athletes in the programs, but many of them, the kids I worked with, they were the outliers. So they didn't really get involved in school. And inevitably, their physical fitness was not, they were quite soft, quite frankly, and, we would do some things where we'd go out for hikes just out from the school, right? Get them out in the woods to create some lesson where I could get them outside and walk. And they had a hard time with short hikes and all. But the more we did that, the more their fitness gradually began to improve. Their everything, like you were just saying, it all began to be interlinked. And I remember one kid when he was in I was middle school, so when we started breaking down some of these limiting beliefs he had about not just academically, but who he was socially and all that, he began to get enough confidence that we finally got him involved in track and field. By the 8th grade year, he did track and field, and he actually became a decent high school high jumper, which I don't think he would have ever done beforehand. But the confidence he began to get, and with a sport like that, it was really him against him. It wasn't necessarily competing with everybody else. So
Can I make one comment on that?
yeah,
Like,
please do.
as it relates to kind of high school, parents come to us, athletes come to us with the expectation of like, they come to us looking for, increases in speed, strength, power, agility, like flexibility, injury prevention, like better, like that's what they come to us for, what they think they come to us for, and we're very good at it. But really what we're teaching these kids is everything about like honesty, work ethic, self-confidence, self-discipline, teamwork, healthy nutrition habits, healthy, overall health habits. That's what we're really giving them through the power of fitness, and I always say to parents, like, where's that class in that in high school? You know, it's like right next to the personal finance class in high school, right? It's non-existent. And like when you talk about some of the epidemics that we got going on, a lot of this stuff can be solved through fitness, but it's got to be kind of reintroduced back at the school level, you know. And if it's not, then that's where programs like mine, you know, we come in and we start working with kids on all of those things, you know, beginning at 8 years old. You know, the 8-year-old, it's really, it's not about like making them faster and stronger and all those things I listed. It's like beginning to ingrain these healthy habits at an early age. And so they begin to kind of adopt them throughout their entire, you know, grammar school, middle school, high school, collegiate careers, and later on in life, you know. So, you know, that's really what we do here.
Yeah, people I think sometimes think, oh, we got gym classes. Well, and I don't want to like sound like I'm bad mouthing gym classes or anything, but they don't, it, it doesn't go deep enough. It doesn't go, by the time they really get into some of the things you're talking about, maybe in high school, a lot of the kids, they've done their minimum requirement for gym class. So they're done. They don't do anymore. And I totally agree that there's so much more they could do. And I've been reading this book, the Crisis of Comfort, or yeah, Crisis of Comfort, and basically talking about this idea that we Americans, people in the West in general, but Americans specifically, he's talking about, are so comfortable with where we are at that we don't really know how to get discomfortable, which is necessary for you to grow, you know, emotionally, physically, spiritually, psychologically, etc. And I see that, you know, as part of what I do, but absolutely can see that from what you do. So if you have a kid who's, you know, they got to get that next barrier, right? There's that next physical barrier that to break it, man, that, you know, it's a mental thing. How do you help them with that? How is because you mentioned a whole bunch of things you guys do, which I love. So when you see those sort of situations, they've maybe plateaued a little bit, and there's that glass ceiling we got to get them through. How do you work with them on that?
You know, I think it's one of the most important things that we do at the very beginning of working with our athletes, right? Like one of the most important things that these kids they don't get is like you need to have them create vision of where they want to be, because a lot of them they don't know it, right? Or they've never thought about it. You know, I heard this great quote said, you know, if you go out and go out and grind, because everything's about like grind, you got to grind. It's like, but if you grind without purpose, you're just going to grind yourself into dust, right? You have to grind with purpose. You know, winning wants you to tell it like what form it should be in, right? And the best kind of example I can give is like, you know, somebody that if you're going to create an ice sculpture, right? You start with this block of ice, and you have to kind of think about like, well, do I want to turn this into? And then you begin kind of chipping away at it, and it turns into like the sculpture that you envisioned, right? Like winning wants to know like what form it should be in. You know, so at the very beginning, like the first thing we do with our athletes and their families is we bring them in for an evaluation. You know, it's our signature thing. It's an hour and a half in length. But the first half hour of that is us beginning to kind of talk to those kids. So we're going to talk to them about like, hey, here, you know, what have you done for training? What's worked? What hasn't? Then we go into nutrition. You know, what do you eat? When do you eat it? How much do you eat? So we get an idea about their fueling strategies. We talk to them about injuries. What have you had about those? What have you done about them? You know, anything we might need to kind of clean up. But then we get in probably the most important part of the evaluation is goals, right? So during goals, I want them to tell me, not their parents, mind you. I want the athlete to tell me, you know, why are you here? If you were to train here, right? Like, what is it you want to get out of it? You know, like, and it can't just be, well, I want to get stronger, you know, or I want to gain weight. Okay, you want to gain weight? How much weight? And when do we need to gain that weight by? And what are we going to use it for? Oh, I want to get faster. Okay, so what kind of speed? First step quickness, acceleration, top speed. You know, like we really want them to nail that down. But then once I get those goals, you know, hey, I asked them the most important question. okay, let's say 6 months from now, I make you way faster, way stronger, way more powerful. You put on 20 pounds. Give me a goal that you have for yourself that you want to accomplish athletically in the next 6 months. And now that vision, that's what we want. We want them to create that vision right there. We want them to say like, oh, well, I want to go from, being on a JV team to being on the varsity team. I want to go from a guy being a girl being on the bench to like an everyday starter. I want to make all conference, like I want them to now understand like this is what I'm training for. And once you get that, once you get their why, the how they're going to get there, it becomes way, way easier, and that is probably the most important thing that we get these kids, because if you just bring them in, be like, oh, okay, it's time to work out, like, or I'm just going in to work out, you have no purpose. And we all understand like the value of having purpose behind things, and the results that we get out of that. And again, I think that's a key component to our success is we're going to ask those questions. We're going to create goals, create vision, and then we're going to, after the end of the season, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to do it again. So, again, that's a formula that we've done since our inception here at Skolfield Performance, and had a lot of success for it.
It's goal setting obviously is vital, and going through those whole processes, and like you just said, having that big why, right? That's one of the things we're constantly kind of seeking, whether it's working from what I do with the mindset, you with the mindset and the body kind of thing. It's that why. Why are you doing it? Well, my dad really thinks, I might have a shot at doing this, but I got to get bigger or stronger. But the kid isn't, if they aren't there, well, we got to, it's going to be an uphill battle, right? So, no question that goal setting piece.
One other piece to that I always ask, and it's painful for kids, like, and getting to that why is that, why are you here? Well, they throw it back like, what? No, why are you here? Well, I want to get faster. Okay, so say I make you way faster, and you're the fastest kid on your team. Why are you here? What's that going to do? Oh, well, I want to get, it's going to, get me to varsity. I said, okay, so let's say we make you way faster and you make the varsity team, like, why are you here? And you kind of dig down in there, like, they don't really understand. I said, no, that, you being on the varsity team is not the reason why you're here. Why are you here? And you keep digging into them. And finally they get to them like, hey, let's say I make you way faster, way stronger. You get on that varsity team, and then you know what? You go out there and you're so good that your team goes to the state championship, and the score's tied, and all of a sudden you steal the ball, you dribble it down, you slam it home, and that's the end of the game. You guys win, and everybody carries you off on their shoulder, right? And it's elaborate, but you get them to kind of picture this, and then they say, "How would you feel?" And then they're like, "Oh my God, I'd feel great." That's why you're here. That's why you're here training with us.
Yeah, absolutely. There are two things I wanted to kind of ask you about too. Is we talked briefly. You mentioned parents. Now, people coming into you and your staff. You guys are the coaches, so you're there, working with them, trying to get all these different benchmarks and all that. What role do you see the parents playing? And so when you talk about nutrition, well, ultimately the parents are going to need to kind of help support that and all. So how do you kind of broach that with parents and pull them into the process? And what sort of role do you see them playing in this whole kind of growth and development with their kids?
What I found with most parents is they're already kind of there. Like, they want their kid to eat better. They want their kid to be more fit. They want their kid to be more confident or have the success. Like, they're there, and they're willing to kind of bring us on to help them with that. But that's exactly what they need, is they need help. Like, not for nothing, right? Like you've had teenagers, and you know what? My boys, I got two boys, and they're both pretty good athletes, but they don't always listen to me. I've got parents that are professional coaches, that coach high school, college. Some have been like professional sports coaches. And they're like, dude, I tell this kid to eat protein and eat 5 times a day and take in post-workout sheets, but he won't listen to me. And it's like, sometimes the parents just need us to speak to the athlete. The athlete needs to hear a different voice other than their parents, because the parents are already there. Like, they're already chirping at them and all the other things. Like, you didn't pick up your room today. You didn't do this. We all, as parents, we've all been there and are there. They just need reinforcement of, hey, Johnny, you need to eat protein in breakfast. You need to eat a good quality breakfast. You can't just eat cereal or skip it, right? You need to, drink this much water each day. You need to do X, Y, Z. That's what they're looking for. And I always tell them, like, listen, you don't worry about telling them what they need to eat anymore. Okay. If they're not following our guidelines, then you either text me, call me, shoot me an email, and we'll address it, because you got plenty of things you're already on top of them about. Like, let us take care of that. So I've just found, like, a lot of parents are already there. They're already on board. Yeah, some need a little bit more education in terms of, like, hey, what are some other ideas I can feed my kids, or need more education as to, here's why we do the things that we do, or here's why, your son or daughter got hurt. Here's what we're going to do to be the solution to fix that. But that's typically what we do. With a lot of the parents, it's just kind of education, and the ones that we see, they're very receptive to it.
Yeah, you're speaking my language there. I had 4 kids myself. All of them were involved in sports, varying degrees of level of success. And yeah, like, I'm a mindset coach, and there's things I'm trying to, they got to hear it from their varsity baseball coach. They got to hear, like, gee whiz, I think I've been saying that, for a long time. So you're absolutely right there. Sometimes they just need to hear it from somebody else too. So to all the parents out there, yeah, sometimes you just need to bring in that other person to help you out.
I have a saying in my household: you're either going to leave here real smart or real strong, right? Like,
Yeah.
and and that's the saying that I say around here too. Hey, you can do one of two things. You can kind of listen, you can get real smart and do things this way, or you're going to get real strong, because we have reinforcement strategies at my house, and I got two pretty strong boys now.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple other questions for you related to kind of the whole training, and this is also where I'm going to bring in a little bit more about the mental health side, the stress side. But people talk quite a bit. There's a couple schools of thought with um, when you begin to specialize in sports, and staying 3-sport, 2-sport athlete, etc. But also, like, now, because athletes are they understand that they need to work out, that there's off-season kind of programming and such. And that's another thing to add to their plate, right? So a lot of kids, and there's lots of data on the amount of stress they're feeling from, all right, the high school. They want to be performing to their best in their sports. They got their academics. They got to try to get into college. They got to do these things. They got working out now to do, and trying to figure out how to fit all that in. Can you talk about how do you approach that? Do you ever really see kind of that kids coming in with that sort of stress level? Like, oh man, I got to go home and now I got this, test to do, or prepare for, whatever. Can you talk about that briefly?
Absolutely. I mean, we do see it, and when it comes to, like, the stressors, and I think it's not just for the athlete themselves, they definitely feel it. It's also for the entire family. Like, the biggest stressor is time. right? Like you've got everything competing for their time and your time, right? So it's like you got to shuttle them to the practices, you got to go to work, they've got their academic side, they got to get to this practice in this sport and this practice in this sport. You got athletes that are playing like their in-season high school sport, but at the same time they're doing workouts for their off-season travel sport. And then, oh my God, if you got a family of like 2 or 3 kids that are all athletes, like that's what we see in here. That's when I talk to parents, it's not whether or not like they want to do our program. They all want to do the program. It's like, how do I make it fit in this crazy schedule I got? So what I try to do is try to educate them. And it's not, I come from a place of like, listen, I don't care if you train with me. Yes, I want to have you as a client. But I want to give you a little bit of education about like, if you look at your kid in a true athletic development model, right? Like what makes the most sense? Like what builds the best athletes, because here's the flawed model that we have in our country, right? We spend 70% of our time working on the skill component of our sport. 70% of our time is spent on, practicing soccer, kicking the ball, dribbling the ball, passing the ball. And then we move into basketball season. And then it's dribble with my right hand, my left hand, layups, foul shots. And then I get the baseball season. All I'm doing is working on the skill component of my sport. And then I spend 20% of my time working on like the strategic side, like the history, the plays, the offense, the defense, learning all that stuff. And then I might actually spend 10% of my time working on like what we call the athletic foundation, the strength, speed, power, agility, mobility, flexibility, injury prevention, nutrition, self-confidence, like the stuff that actually makes me an athlete, right? And it's a flawed model. And for all the reasons I outlined earlier, like obesity rates are at an all-time high, injury rates are skyrocketing, kids drop out of sports. So we don't subscribe to that. What we say is like, if you really want your athlete to kind of develop, you need to spend more time on working what's called their athletic foundation, right? So if you look at athletic development in a form of a pyramid, right? The base of the pyramid is all the things that make you athletic, regardless of your sport. It doesn't matter if you play football, baseball, basketball, field hockey, like you all need to have great strength, power, agility, speed. You got to be able to fuel yourself correctly. You got to have great self-confidence. You take any one of those pieces away, right? And you're not going to be the best at your sport. You're not going to be the best that you could be. But what we say is, hey, build this foundation. Any budding architect will tell you, like, hey, you want to make a pyramid bigger, like build the foundation bigger. The bigger you make that foundation, the more skill you can stack on top of it. Now, all of a sudden, that skill component of your sport becomes way easier. Ask any good coach, they'd rather have a bunch of athletes come to tryouts, like real high-performing athletes, because they can teach them the skill. Versus what they get now is a lot of skilled kids that aren't athletic. And the other way I kind of illustrate that is like, how much easier is your sport to do when you're in shape, when you have high levels of fitness? So we say spend 70% of your time like building that foundation, 30% of your time working on the skill component, and then 10% of the time kind of working on the strategic kind of, history, that sort of thing. If you want, and we've proven it over and over and over again, right? Because those athletes that have the big foundation, they're not just great at one sport, right? Yeah. They're athletes in multiple sports. Bo Jackson, right? Wasn't just a great baseball player, a heck of a football player. Tom Brady, believe it or not, wasn't just a great football player, also got, drafted for baseball. You look at some of the local athletes around here, you look at Flaherty, that kid was a QB on his football team, played high level of basketball, and also was a first round draft pick, and so again, like build your foundation, spend your time there, and then go work on the other stuff. And a lot of the showcases, travel clubs, that they don't necessarily want to hear that, but I can prove it over and over and over again about like how that is a superior way of athletic development.
Yeah, I totally buy into that whole idea. I mean, you obviously would probably remember the name Trey Fletcher and what an incredible athlete he was, right? Like, so his freshman year when he's at Chevrolet, in basketball, and I had coached him in basketball when he was younger, and that was probably his third best sport, right? And he's playing basketball, but he's also doing indoor track, and he comes in second place in the New England's the long jump in his fourth best sport because he was just he was just a phenomenal athlete, but because he was such a good athlete with all those things you talked about, he could start developing those skills in all the other sports, So, yeah, I totally agree that I also, I obviously think when you talk about that pyramid of training, we really ignore the mind aspect, right? Which is where I come from. And I do a real simple couple little exercises with kids a lot. One of them is it's all about kind of visualization, but I just get them pointing out in front of them and then turn across their body, keeping their arm totally straight, right? Not moving their arm. Go as far as they can and see where they're pointing to. Then we go through a little process, visualization, just kind of changing a few things in their mind, have their eyes shut, do the exact same thing and see who went further. And 100% of the time, every single one of them went further. Well, what did you change? They changed a few things in their mind. I could do the same thing with a little pendulum. I could give them a little pendulum and I say, listen, the quickest way to begin to change some of these things, you want to change the direction you're going athletically, academically, in your life, whatever, start with changing your thinking. And that, like you kind of said, you got the foundation, athletic foundation, and for me, the mind kind of foundation is those mindset, is the set of beliefs and things that you're really kind of operating under. And the influence of all that is powerful. And obviously it impacts, when we talk about doing these things, I've said it already, this show it's your confidence, your mental health, which is so related to how you deal with that. And, you know, it builds the person holistically. And I love the fact that you kind of talk about that whole holistic approach.
Yeah, I make one more comment about that. It's like, a lot of kids, um, have this idea or this fallacy about like you're either mentally tough or you're not. You're either disciplined or not, and it's like that is a skill. Like you don't get discipline, you don't get mental toughness from like an external source. It's got to come from within, and like anything else, it's something that's got to be developed. You know, and it's in everything you do. Like if you want more discipline, like you're going to practice on a daily basis. And that comes from like simple tasks of like, hey, every day I want you to make your bed, right? Like every day, like I want you to get dressed and I want you to, tuck in your shirt. Every day I want you to go um and make sure you drink, 16 ounces of water when you get up in the morning. That builds discipline, right? And when you don't do that, when you're like, I don't want to do that, like you're taking it away. But the more you begin to kind of do that, right? It's not about habits. That's how you build discipline. Discipline is built and cultivated by doing the same important things that you need to do every single day. That's how you build toughness, and you do it no matter what. Like no excuses, no nothing. Like you do it with the mindset of no matter what. But discipline, mental toughness, as you know, like that's absolutely something that can be built, and it's not difficult. But it does take work in order to do it. And that's what we do here, right? Like we're teaching you in ways you may not even realize about the importance of consistency in working out 3 times a week. When you're here following this specific process to get you to where you need to go, and not straying from it, and not skipping things from it, and not skipping conditioning, right? And pushing through when it gets a little bit more difficult. Like that's, like the other kids, the other things that we hear from parents is like, dude, they have so much more confidence from when they came in. And then it just magically appear. It was cultivated, and anybody can do it.
Yeah, that's great. use of that word cultivated too. It's that's spot on. So how do you, because they're coming to you, your facility, I don't know what, 3 days a week maybe, or whatever it is. Those other days, how do you, that self-discipline idea and the goals that you worked with your athletes, how do you hold them accountable and check in for those other days? Like, you were supposed to have eaten such and such. Did you do that? Did you get your sleep? You got to get 8 hours sleep. Did you do that? Do you have like a tracking thing to help them? How do you help hold them kind of accountable outside of those times that they come into your facility where you've got a little more control there?
Well, the good news is when they show up, like we have accountability systems built into everything that we do, right? Like, yeah, we definitely have an app to help them track. We give them, hey, here's how many calories you're supposed to eat per day, enter it into this app. But the beauty about it is guess what? That goal that you set during the evaluation, when you said, hey, I want to gain 20 pounds, I have a board out in my weight room, a giant board that has everybody's name on it. And it says, here's what you weighed when you first started with us. Here's what your goal weight is. Here's what you weighed when you last weighed in with us. And here's up or down, how many you up or down from the last time you weighed in. So now, like that kid comes in and he hasn't gained weight in 2 weeks or he lost weight. Oh, now the questions start coming. Okay, how come we lost weight? Well, it's always, I don't know. Okay, let me see your food log. 100% of the time, like not gaining weight is related to, okay, you're not taking the right amount of calories in 100% of the time. And you're not, and more importantly, you're not tracking it, right? Because it doesn't lie. Or like they begin to kind of notice about themselves, like, oh, you know what? I just had a kid the other day, high performing baseball player, came up to me the other day and said, you know what? Oh, it's bad. I dropped 3 pounds and I'm really tired today. I'm like, oh, what happened? He's like, oh, well, I traveled all the way to this place for this showcase. I didn't get home. I had practice. I didn't get home till like 11 at night. And then I still had to complete this homework assignment. I didn't go to bed till 1 and I had to get up at 6. Oh, I'm definitely not recovered. Right. And those lessons begin to kind of teach them about, their own self-accountability and being accountable to themselves. And that's just one of the many processes that we have in place with these kids. So they can begin to kind of see, like, you can't be there all the time. Right. And what you want to pass along these kids, and I try to do for parents is like help these kids begin to kind of auto-regulate and do this stuff on their own so that you're not always on top of them, and they can gain a sense of independence and develop these habits. So, the things that we do in here have ways to kind of map back. So I don't necessarily need to kind of say, hey, here's what I need you to do on your day off. Right? Most of the time we just say, have them focus on like, hey, just make sure you're fueling yourself right. Get all your calories in, make sure you're eating. If you want to do something extra, you could do X, Y, Z, but make sure you're getting your 8 hours worth of sleep, that we talked to you about. So, because those things, when you get in here, now we're able to kind of see, okay, are you really doing the stuff at home?
Yeah, that it's just Trevor Cashy, I think. Are you familiar with that name at all? I
I
just
don't think so.
stumbled across him. He's this nutritional guy who has worked with like Olympic teams from all over the world. But the reason I brought him up was what he does and his coaching. He talks about it as being cognitive nutritional coaching or something. But it's a lot of it's all behavior, right? But the tracking, these logs that you were talking about, and just doing those things make you more aware of what you're putting in, make you more likely to follow through. And that is really the brunt of really what kind of has separated him from, again, I just kind of been doing a little research on him because I came across him, was intrigued by what he was doing. But he's right. I mean, that's it. And what you just said is those sort of things that you're trying to then build it into the habit, the awareness. A lot of the stuff I do, it all begins with making them aware of where they're at, right? You can't begin to make any
Right.
changes if you don't really get where you're at. So in your case, you could take hard measurements, and you could do some of these other things to kind of, this is where you're at. This is where we need to go. And all of that is, I don't care whether you're trying to change the body, change the mind, trying to change both. You got to begin with where you're at, and you got to understand where you're at, and then you can begin to kind of, make those adjustments and those behavioral changes and whatever else it is that you need to do. So, uh, so I've got parents who listen to me and all. What are some of the things that you would kind of, as a father and as a coach, and again, we're talking, a lot about the physical and the sports aspect, but there's a huge crossover into how kids feel and the mental health that comes from this. So is there something you would like to, encourage them, help us, kind of pick them up a little bit, and any words of wisdom from your years' experience?
Yeah, I'd say probably the most important lesson I've learned along the way is, it's so easy to get wrapped up in like how your son or daughter is doing and played on the field and what kind of game they had and getting all worked up. Man, one of the most biggest changes that happened to me, like, is I began to kind of sit back and just appreciate the process and the fact that I'm lucky enough to have a couple of kids that are healthy and can play sports, and I get to enjoy it, right? Like we lose that. We get caught up in like whether or not they're the best, or are they gonna get recruited to college, or are they gonna make this elite team? Dude, you got to take a step back. Stop yelling at the umpires, stop yelling at the officials, right? Go watch your kid and watch how awesome it is to go see them play on the field and have success. In those days that, that they come off the field and they, may not have had the best game in the world, right? May have had kind of a bad day, or they didn't do like what they were supposed to do, right? Like when you get in the car with them, like the worst thing in the world you can do really is then go, start going step by step about, what kind of game they had and what they should have done here and done there. Trust me, I've done that too. It's the worst thing you can do for them, because that's not what they're looking for. Because I guarantee you, their coach or their teammates have already done that, and they're not feeling great about themselves. What they need is mom and dad, some understanding, some empathy, or maybe even like talk about something else, but you kind of starting to go down that road. I can guarantee you want to learn a fast track way to get your kid to learn how to tune you out. There it is. Right. And creating a wedge, we talk about like, it's this funny thing that kind of goes hand in hand with it. Like, everybody talks about outliers and the 10,000 hours and stuff like that. I heard a great quote once said, for every kid who plays that singular sport and their kid parents pushed them to get to 10,000 hours, for every kid that had success with that, I can show you 20,000 who's the kids hate the parents for it. Right. Because they pushed them too hard. Sports, remember, they do this stuff because it's supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to make them feel great at the end, right? That's why they do it. It's not about like hitting the home run or the game winner and stuff like that. That's part of it. That's just part of playing the game. They do it because it makes them feel good, right? So understand that as a parent, and just take a step back and be able to enjoy it. And remind them of that, and tell them like, hey, I really loved how you did this, give them some positive feedback.
I interviewed a couple people. One of them, Coach Bucket Benzer, who, baseball guy down in Florida. He actually was a hitting instructor in the Rangers organization for a while. But he has a book. It either has just come out or he's getting ready to bring it out, but it's called The Ride Home, and talking just about that very thing and the negative impact sometimes that ride home has. And I did an interview with Mike Bordick, who talked about the strain between he and his dad, who was military guy who was really push, and there was a strain in the relationship for quite a while, because of those sort of ride homes, right? They didn't know where to stop being a coach or somebody trying to, good intentions lots of times, right? You want to push them along, you want to try to get them better, but knowing that role difference and that line can be real subtle, but important lesson to learn. So yeah, I'm glad you kind of brought that up too. Um,
Yeah.
so if you've got website, right? Skolfield Sports Performance, is that
Yeah.
the,
Skolfieldperformance.com is our website. We've got a great social media presence. So if you're kind of interested, or you're like, what do these guys really do? We're Skolfield_sports. We're on Facebook, Instagram. Let's see, what else do I post on? I post on LinkedIn, Google. We've got a really good social media presence. We do some stuff on YouTube as well. Just so you get an idea about like the day in the life of what it is to be a client here. We're big into kind of celebrating our kids and their achievements and what they're going to accomplish. And I think you'll kind of get a feel for the culture that we have if you go on our go on our social media services, and if you're interested in kind of inquiring about kind of more what we do, I take everything kind of step by step. The first thing I do is jump on a phone call with parents and athletes and get a feel for what you're looking for, and if you kind of like what you hear, and if I feel you're the right fit, then then we can take you on as a client. But Skolfieldperformance.com, that's our website.
awesome? And I will also put that when we get this description out and stuff. That'll be in that description. So I do appreciate you taking the time. A lot of important information out there. And again, this isn't, the idea. Sports performance, yeah, that's what we do. But it, as you said many times, a small percentage of kids actually go on to play college. But what they develop through high school sports, even, and getting in shape and taking care of their body, and hopefully these habits around nutrition and everything else, that's lifetime. And that's one of the best things they can do for their overall mental health and well-being as well. So thank you for the time. And for all you parents out there, I've been saying this more frequently at the end of my shows. Just about all these kind of statistics that you read about with, that open with that little kind of commercial for these master classes I have coming up, where the CDC is talking about the number of kids who experiencing hopelessness and the stressors and college applications and the interview process and trying to perform athletically and academically. The data is kind of disturbing with how much stress they're feeling and all. So if you're experiencing any of that, see your kid experiencing any of that, the ultimate, like, you can look at a lot of these different causes, but ultimately it comes right back to our mindset. And, as a parent, I had 4 kids of my own, and I'm investing in money and all these different things to try to get them in the right college and improve their sports and all that. Most parents also understand intuitively that their mindset's behind a lot of it, but they don't know what to do regarding that. So I would encourage you to go to coachchuck360.com, coachchuck360.com. And I do offer a strategy session, but I would waive my fee for that. So when you get to that coachchuck360.com, if you text me your best first and last name, best email, and just say podcast gift, I'll send a special link where we can have this conversation. And I will give you a strategy, something you can take with you, some, kind of like a little thing you can go with, and you can go with that. You can potentially find, other help if need be. I don't really care, except that you get what you're looking for in terms of helping your child reach their full potential. And if there's things that I can offer you, fantastic. But once again, that's CoachChuck360.com. And until the next time, I wish you the best.